So when simplifying radical expressions, there are two properties that I need to consider: the product property of roots and the quotient property of roots. In the product property, what it is saying is I could take a root and I can break it up into two separate roots. Or if I'm given two separate radicals, I can multiply them back together to create a single radical. In the quotient property, if I have the root of a fraction, I need to break that fraction up into the root on the top and then the root on the bottom. That way we have just two single numbers and it splits up into two separate problems. So we're going to use these two properties on our examples on the next slide. In A, I have the cube root of 162 n to the 7th. So I don't have to worry about using the product property or the quotient rule. So what I'm going to do is break 162 down like I would as if it was a square root. But instead of looking for groups of 2, since my index is a 3, I'm going to look for groups of 3. So two factors of 162 are 2 and 81. 81 will break down into 9 and 9, and our 9s break down into 3 and 3. So since it is a cube root, I'm going to look for 3 of the same number. So I do have 3 3s, so that's going to go in front. And underneath my cube root, I'm going to be left with the 2 and one more 3. Now I have n to the 7th, so I have 7 n's, and I'm going to group them into groups of 3. So I have one group of 3, and I have a second group of 3. Since I have two groups, I'm going to have n squared in front and the single n remaining. So my final answer would be 3n squared times the cube root of 6n. In letter B, I have the cube root of 27x to the 6th divided by 8. So since I have a fraction, I need to split this up, and I'm going to take the cube root of 27x to the 6th separate from the cube root of 8 in the denominator. So I'm going to break up the cube root of 27, and factors of 27 are 9 and 3. Factors of 9 are 3 and 3. So again, I'm going to be looking for a group of 3, and I have 3 3s. So I'm going to have a 3 in front. No number is left over, but I do need to break up my x's. So since I have 6 x's, I'm going to group them in 3s. So I have one group of 3, and I have a second group of 3. So I'm going to have a 3x squared in my numerator with nothing left over. In my denominator, I have the cube root of 8. So factors of 8 would be 2 and 4. 4 break up into 2 and 2. I end up with 3 2's and nothing left over, so I have a 2 in my denominator. So my final answer is going to be 3x squared divided by 2. In letter C, I have the 4th root of 8n squared times the 4th root of 4n squared. So what I'm going to do is make this one radical. So I'm going to multiply the 4 and the 8 to give me the 4th root of 32. And then the n's I'm going to multiply as well. So n squared times n squared will give me n to the 4th. Now I have a single radical, so I can break this down. I do have an index of 4 this time, so I'm going to be looking for groups of 4 of the same number. Factors of 32 are 8 and 4. Factors of 8 are 4 and 2. Factors of 4 are 2 and 2. My remaining 4 is going to break up into 2 and 2 as well. So since I have an index of 4, I need a group of 4 2's. So I'm going to take 4 of my 2's to create one group, so that 2 will go in the front, and I'm going to have my last remaining 2 inside. I'm going to break up my n to the fourth into 4 n's. That gives me one full group, so I'm going to have a single n in front and no n's remaining. So my final answer is going to be 2n times the fourth root of 2.